when you think back, from the 70s and 80s, before internet even came around, the allure of Aboriginal culture was through canvas paint art and tourists coming here to Australia, and the ways in which we market and advertised back in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s. And then the internet came about. Everyone adapted a different marketing. Now we have social media marketing, digital marketing. It's only natural that the Aboriginal people and culture would adapt to that aspect. Me as an Aboriginal person, it's a very proud thing to see so many more blackfellas in business, and it's great to see us adapt to a digital convention. And I think if we didn't have that, we probably wouldn't have the access and the ability to actually promote from community itself, because we have access to social media at the push of a button. And it's allowed us to tell our stories. It's allowed us to adapt culture to that aspect. It's allowed us to create better understanding and awareness of the social issues we deal with and the political issues we deal with, but also the importance of just culture, because, ignorance comes from being uneducated about a certain aspect, and this has allowed us to sort of ameliorate a lot of that ignorance and discrimination, and this say, this is us, this is why we are the way we are, this is what we do, this is our culture. And I'm quite thankful for the digital platforms coming up, because I myself, I started out as a graphic designer, and I used to be a canvas-based artist. And from a little girl, I always drew, and I used to color, and I used to paint. And then I discovered the world of graphic design and digital art, and then which led me into digital marketing and got me to where I am today. So it has digital marketing, digital art, anything digital has really elevated our people in the aspect and our culture to a whole other level. Songlines are very important because they tell the history and the story of the local area, and having the digital ability to tell stories is important, whether it be from video to written word to artistically. Like if you see in the back here, there's a piece of artwork that I've done. If I go zoom up a bit, see that was digitally done, and that represents stories and songlines, and the ability to be able to do that from a digital aspect, from me actually drawing onto a Surface Pro, to have the ability to actually do that and adapt that to artwork and to branding and business is important. But songlines in the digital space, it's been really good to see how storytelling is being told and using the digital field. There was a developer that was creating an Aboriginal game, a virtual reality experience of what it would be like for an Aboriginal person back before colonisation, and it was going to be used as an educational piece for school students and tourists. And that just brought a huge smile to my face. While the elders were really very specific about the more traditional conventions, I think for this, have the ability for you to walk in the shoes of an Aboriginal person of what it could potentially be like back in those days, gives a better understanding to share culture in that sense. I even go back to like when you go into museums, the fact that you walk up to motion censored art pieces and they speak lingo and language, they have that adaptability to share that and actually hear the pronunciation. It's just great to see the leaps and bounds that our culture has adapted to in a digital aspect to create better understanding and a wealth of knowledge. A lot of Aboriginal businesses have had to adapt to a more modern aspect over the past generations. We as an ancient culture, we've adapted to modern forms, and especially now with a national pandemic or worldwide pandemic, it's been an aspect in terms of, okay, how do we adapt to this new field and how do we navigate it? And in the sense of, a lot of Aboriginal businesses, we've stemmed out into different industries, not just tourism, while that is a strong part that we do play within the Australian paradigm, in terms of access to internet, access to information, how do we network more effectively? Aboriginal people, we're kinesthetic people, we learn and adapt, and we take in information by talking and visuals and so forth, and having that element to actually network and setting up what's working for my business, what would work for yours. We're in fashion and we're in design, what can we do, and bounce ideas off each other. When engaging with the Indigenous community, this is just not in a tourism aspect, but any aspect with Aboriginal community members in it, and that is that there's a lot of cultural protocols that you need to go through, community consultation, and that takes time and engagement, and getting permission, using artwork elements, use law as in LORE, local history. There's so many variables to it, and it can be a long process, but it's an effective process because having that community consultation is important. And the misconception when dealing with Aboriginal people in the aspect that people sort of just stigmatise the communities that we're all the same. We're not. Every mob in terms of tribes and areas is so different. So that's why it's imperative that you need to have the community-led, community-focused consultation when dealing in a digital aspect, because that needs to resonate in that and what you're using, whether it be for programming. It could be as simple as a Zoom meeting. Having an acknowledgement of country is very, very important. While we do meet in a digital space, we still sit on Aboriginal land, and the little things like that are vitally important in that sense, and it really brings that strong cultural aspect. Some businesses, in terms of more remote areas, accessibility is an issue in terms of internet access, phone access, email access. And a lot of non-Indigenous organisations, when collaborating with an Aboriginal business, tend to forget that, and that can be an issue. And an Aboriginal person can really be a little bit standoffish in the sense that I'm kind of embarrassed to admit that I don't have access to internet, and that itself comes down to service providers ensuring that there is access in remote areas so that they can conduct business in that aspect. I use one of my clients as an example. When we were hit with COVID and social, social restrictions and social distancing, we had to actually change the whole way in which we deliver a community-led program to say, okay, how do we connect with a community member? How do we deliver this program? How do we get people engaged and keep them healthy and moving and active during COVID? And how do we ensure that their mental health is good and their social health and cultural well-being is important as well? And how do we use the digital space to do that? And we had to actually strategize and sit down and brainstorm what it is we had to do. And realistically, we didn't have the time because the field was constantly changing with more restrictions and more rules and regulations in each state. And we always had to keep shifting it. And that's the same with tourism too, because a lot of Aboriginal businesses in tourism rely on people coming to visit, and actually adapting their cultural program to a digital aspect too takes a lot of planning. For example, elders are a very vital and important part of what we do with our culture and how we adapt that to a more modern stream. And just to get access to them is an issue. My father is a stolen generation, and he's part of an organisation called Kinshla Boys Home, and they were doing workshops around elders and sharing culture and information, and as well as story business, and just having the opportunity to have those old fellas to have access to an iPad, to an internet was an issue, to the point that they went out and engaged with them while they actually had permission to go to their house and show them how to use the internet, how to use an iPad, and how to dial in. These are little things that, while for everyone else is something as simple, but for an Aboriginal person who's out in remote areas or an elder that does not have access to this, nor the financial means to actually pay for it, can be a huge issue that hinders the ability to share culture. Financial means is a very big thing with Aboriginal organisations and small business startups. Having access to more workable computers, they may have an old computer, what to do to update it, what if this happens, little things like that. Like I said, everybody's different, and actually taking the time to sit down and speak with them and spend the time to say, okay, and plan and map it out is a key component in how I work with my clients. I like to start with basics, the simple basics of, what's this program, actually talking one-on-one with them and asking, what is it that you feel that you need? I'm a very huge advocate for community capacity building, teaching them how to do it themselves. And like I said, every community is different. For me, it's just making sure that, do you understand how to access this? Do you understand what this does? And then explaining the process. I'm the type of person that thinks a couple steps ahead. I'm teaching them this, but you think of the long-term effect of it and where this is going to get them in their journey and what they need for their business. And for clients, some clients may not see that. And that's why I'm an engagement consultant in that aspect, to teach them how to do it and actually see what risks are there, and this could potentially happen. Your internet could drop out and you're running a cultural workshop. What do we do? How do you troubleshoot? How do you get in contact with me when you're having an issue with it? Let's do, a facts sheet of what to and what not to do, or what they can do in that aspect. I myself am from New South Wales in Sydney, and there are a lot of initiatives such as Yapa Business Hub. They actually had a lot of workshops digitally to allow businesses to teach them how to do digital marketing and how to access digital means. So there were a lot of Indigenous-led and Indigenous-specific programs and organisations that actually got the information out there to say, let's get involved, learn how to keep your business thriving and striving to more to reach your goals. And I think that was great during COVID, and it was good to see not just Indigenous businesses, but non-Indigenous businesses support as well the Aboriginal community with any type of business that they have to help them engage and just get the information out there and to learn in that aspect. So it was really, really good. I've seen the pop-up of information through newsletters and emails, community networks like IndigiMail, sharing information about how you can access information to keep your business thriving. And it was really great to see. The ability to be able to access that and have communications with other Indigenous nations, First Nations across the world is great, because we can collaborate, we can talk, we could share. Now it's just a simple link, do you have time to chat? And let's chat, The only thing is the time difference. And I think the ability to allow us to do that has made accessibility better in the sense that we can collaborate, we can educate, and we can work on projects together in all industries. And I think being able to do that it's a great thing. It's changed the way in which our lives are engaging with culture, how we share our knowledge. And thinking back, imagine if we never had the internet. Imagine if we, didn't advance with mobile phones and video cameras and where we're at right now. From the record that you showed me, or to a CD, from a tape to now you've got it on Spotify. Yes, we have digital platforms that are led by Aboriginal people, supported by government programs, but I would love to see something that realistically can be held in the hand of a non-Indigenous person. Like, I can access this, to have them to log on and learn more about their local law and history. We need more of that. We need more accessibility to the elders, to see more programs based around them, to keep sharing that knowledge and those stories. And we're only just at the baseline of it now. We're slowly climbing, but I'd love to see it get to the point that kids can log onto a computer, or an Aboriginal game is something that a kid could play on PlayStation. Or you look at Disney, Pixar, they're all got stories around different cultures and stuff like that. Let's see an Aboriginal story. I would love to in the next 10 years be able to just sit and walk out and see an area that no matter what area or field that you go into, there's an Aboriginal aspect. That's my dream.